Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive deep into the unseen forces that drive absolutely everything we do. We're talking about unmasking the reality of human behavior. Have you ever wondered why you suddenly get so angry at a totally trivial comment? Or why you instantly feel anxious the second you walk into certain group settings? Well, today we're stripping away the myths and looking directly at the biological machinery that is really running the show.
Picture this: Sir Isaac Newton, one of history's absolute greatest scientific minds. This is the guy who literally mapped out the laws of gravity, but he famously admitted, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people." Think about that for a second. This brilliantly logical man could predict the exact path of a comet, but he was completely, utterly baffled by human irrationality. It perfectly sets up the illusion we're about to shatter today. We all love to think of ourselves as these hyperlogical, evolved creatures, but the truth? It's way more primitive.
So it kind of leads to a slightly terrifying question, doesn't it? Are you really in control of your behavior? We just naturally assume our thoughts and actions are completely conscious. When we make a decision, we feel like we're the ones sitting in the driver's seat. But think about the last time you were in a heated argument and just blurted out something hurtful that you instantly regretted. Where did that even come from? What if a stranger inside you is actually holding that steering wheel? What if there are incredibly powerful forces operating completely under the radar of your awareness? Well, to figure that out, we're turning to an incredible source, Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature. This is a brutally realistic look at our species, and we're using it as our ultimate guide to deciphering human behavior today. This isn't just about pointing out all our flaws, though. It's an absolute masterclass in human development. Because when you treat human nature not as some sort of moral failing, but as a biological reality that we can actually understand and master, that's when you can finally start operating with real intentionality in your daily life. Here's the roadmap for this explainer. We're going to break it down into 1. The stranger within us. 2. Our primal social wiring. 3. The power of the crowd. 4. The paradox of influence. 5. Lower versus higher self. And finally, 6. Mastering your human nature. Let's jump right in. All right, Section 1, The Stranger Within Us, Unmasking Our Unconscious Drives. Let's start by stripping away the excuses we constantly make for our sudden anger or jealousy or that exhausting need for attention. You know how it goes. We say, "Oh, I was just tired," or "something just came over me." But the reality? Human nature is a collection of deep, unconscious forces that literally push and pull our behavior. Our troubling emotions aren't a mystery. They're an ingrained biological reality. If we dug down, we'd see that what triggers us today actually stems from childhood patterns or ancient evolutionary wiring. Once we realize this stranger inside us is just a predictable part of who we are, we can stop playing the victim to our own minds and start taking genuine control of our personal development. Moving on to Section 2, our primal social wiring, 5 million years in the making. To really grasp why we act the way we do today, we gotta rewind the clock, way, way back. Our fancy modern cognitive brains are basically just built on top of millions of years of primitive emotional wiring. And that wiring was designed strictly to bind groups together. Long before we had language or abstract thought, our ancestors had to survive in incredibly hostile environments. You couldn't survive alone. No way. So they developed these lightning-fast, nonverbal emotions like shame, joy, resentment that could be read instantly on a face. If one person felt panic, the whole group had to feel it instantly just to survive. It was the ultimate life-or-death social network. And that gives birth to what we call the social force. This is a physiological compulsion to unconsciously imitate others, read the room, and urgently fit in. Back then, it kept you alive. And what's wild is that this exact same primal urge to belong is exactly why you unconsciously check your smartphone 50 times a day. Early humans got their entire sense of safety from the validating gaze of their tribe. Today, the environment has changed, sure, but our biology hasn't. A like, a comment, a message, to your ancient brain, that's just a phantom pair of eyes reassuring you that you still belong to the pack. Which brings us to Section 3, the power of the crowd, and why groups literally make us lose our minds. So this primal desire to fit in, it misfires spectacularly in modern group dynamics. While it kept us safe from predators, it is incredibly dangerous in a modern office or on social media. When we're in a crowd, we experience this intense hyper-certainty. We unconsciously mimic leaders and completely lose our individual reflection. When you're alone, you naturally doubt yourself, right? But in a group where everyone is nodding along, your brain screams that dissenting is biologically dangerous. This is exactly why we see massive, completely irrational financial bubbles, like the subprime mortgage crisis. We feel shielded by the crowd, so we become capable of terrible decision-making, simply because our brains prioritize conformity over basic logic. All right, Section 4, the paradox of influence, the Lyndon B. Johnson Masterclass. Okay, we know human nature drives us to seek status, but how we actually gain influence is super counterintuitive. Our first instinct is always to aggressively hype our accomplishments, right? Make it all about us. But look at former US President Lyndon Johnson. When he first entered the Senate, he used a brilliantly opposite approach. Step 1, he intentionally stepped back, assumed an inferior position. Step 2, he sought out older senators, asked for their advice, and let them be the absolute star. Why does this work so well? Because people are naturally defensive. Giving a rival rare, genuine validation lowers their defenses completely and opens their minds up to your influence. It's the ultimate genius disguise for your ambitions. Now for Section 5, lower versus higher self, the battle inside your mind. This right here is the absolute crux of human development. It's the daily war going on inside your head. On one side, you have the lower self. This guy is emotional, reactive, constantly begging you to take the easy path of least resistance, and wants you to just lose your identity in the comfort of the crowd. But on the flip side is your higher self. This is the independent, rational, realistic you, the one that actively manages emotional reactions. Developing this higher self, actively choosing it over the biological comfort of the lower self, is literally the only way to feel truly fulfilled and in control of your own destiny. So how do we win this internal war? With purpose. Fighting for a genuine cause acts as a massive force multiplier. Think of Napoleon's citizen armies, fighting passionately for the ideals of a revolution, compared to the tired mercenaries they were up against who just wanted a paycheck. That deep passion creates unstoppable momentum. When you channel your behavior toward a genuine higher purpose, like mastering a craft or building something meaningful, it protects you from what are called false purposes. You know, those empty pursuits the lower self loves, like chasing cheap social media attention or quick cash. A true cause gives you the rational energy to actually bounce back from adversity. And finally, as Section 6, mastering your human nature, becoming an apprentice. So we've decoded the mechanics, but knowledge alone isn't enough. We have to actively put this codebook into practice by becoming an apprentice to our own nature. This takes brutal honesty. Take envy, for example. It's a totally natural, unavoidable emotion. But instead of letting envy make you bitter and resentful, which is exactly what the reactive lower self wants, your higher self can actually acknowledge it and use it as fuel. Use it to push yourself harder to excel. By continuously observing the stranger within us, subtracting our immediate emotions from big decisions, and actively detaching from the group's viral emotions, we transform. We go from being passive slaves of our biology to absolute masters of our character. I want to leave you with this one vital question. Every single day is a tug of war between your 5 million-year-old primitive wiring and your rational potential. When you wake up tomorrow and inevitably face some frustration or feel the overwhelming pressure of a crowd, which self are you going to let drive your actions? Are you going to take the comfortable path of least resistance and let the group think for you? Or will you do the hard work to cultivate your rational, higher self and truly master your human nature? The choice and the steering wheel is finally yours. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope it gave you some amazing insights.